Hello, and welcome to another Hip Historian Virtual Happy Hour Tour. My name is Brenda Holt, and I am with AARP Arizona. We are the nation's largest nonprofit, nonpartisan organization dedicated to empowering people 50 and older to choose how they live as they age. And with a nationwide presence of nearly 38 million members across the nation and approximately 900,000 right here in Arizona, we work to strengthen communities and we advocate for what matters most to families, such as health security, financial stability, and personal fulfillment. During the month of September, we will raise the awareness and priority engagements of AARP's offering for older adults while helping workers stay competitive at work. AARP is a wise friend and fierce defender of older workers and has program offerings and resources that align with each of these consumer pillars. We are a wise friend in a rapidly changing job market. You can count on AARP to help you navigate your job search and career path and fight back against age bias. We are also a fierce defender. AARP is fighting to strengthen age discrimination laws, increase protections, and help companies across the country foster age-diverse workplaces that value experience. For more information and resources, please visit us at aarp.org/work or aarp.org/Arizona. Thank you again for attending today's session.
Welcome to the show. Get ready to meet your host for the night, Arizona's very own hip historian himself, Marshall Shore.
Well, hello and good evening. I want to welcome you all to Arizona History Happy Hour. Oh my gosh, so happy you can all join us this evening. As you know, we've got another great show for you tonight. So my name is Marshall Shore and I am your host this evening. And so today, September 29th, almost October. You can almost feel a chill in the air. Well, if you're up at like 4 a.m., it might be a little chilly. But today being the 29th, so back in 1877, the first Southern Pacific engine made its regular run for the first time into Yuma at 11 p.m. Not 3:10 to Yuma, but it was 11 p.m. to Yuma. Now, it is also Silent Movie Day. It's a day where we celebrate all those movies that had no sound from the late 1880s, pretty much almost through the 30s, when you have things like the Orpheum Theater, which does Silent Sundays. Hopefully they'll be starting those up again. I know they're doing Nosferatu coming up in October, so that should be fun, where they'll have some folks playing music to that. But that was kind of the thing, is you would have a group playing music along to your silent film. It is also World Heart Day to help raise awareness of cardiovascular disease. It is also VFW Day because, this is the day where we commemorate all those hardworking and sacrificing veterans, men and women who selflessly served in the military. And VFW stands for Veterans of Foreign War. Now, it is also National Coffee Day. Now, if you think it's like, it was a week after fall started, so, procrastination, that's why you need the coffee to get you back on track and get ready for the cold weather that might be approaching our direction. All right. So what can you expect from tonight? Well, we do a little bit of Arizona trivia as well as Arizona music history. We do a little bit on a little town in Arizona somewhere, as well as we have a beverage. From the Vault is something you might drive by on a regular basis and not even know is there. And of course, we have an amazing guest as always. So, all right. Now, if this is your first time watching, you might wonder, who is that man and why is he on my screen? Well, As I said, my name is Marshall Shore, and I got here a little over 22 years ago. I was living and working in Brooklyn at a beautiful Carnegie building and decided to trade winter, all that snow and slush, for something that was much more livable. And so I wound up in a little library in South Phoenix, which had this rich oral tradition of community. And so that kind of gave me a different way to look at Arizona. We promptly moved into a beautiful 1956 ranch that when we moved in, it was oh so many tones of beige. I'm happy to say outside, it is seafoam and cantaloupe. And there's what my kitchen looks like even today. All that buttercream yellow tile. In fact, friends call our house the Unmuseum because everything is touchable and working. Now, as soon as we got here, all we kept hearing about how there was no history. But I knew that wasn't true because every time I would go somewhere, whether it was on foot, on a bike, on a car, I would run across so many amazing people, places, and stories. And then there's that post-war boom that I think in so many ways made the Arizona that we all know and love today, all those GIs that stationed here, trained here, or passed through on their way to somewhere else. And after the war, they were moving here in huge numbers. Now, so my name is Marshall. I'm also known as the hip historian, which means I get to play a lot with Arizona history. And I'm excited because later on, we're going to talk a little bit about, I'm going to show, we did a little video for a local app called Local Buzz. That is the Jones Montoya House. So I'm going to show that to end the show this evening. We also have our Haunted History Tour coming up on October 8th. You can find out more information on that on hiphistorian.com. Also coming in October, the State Fair, which is going on now. In fact, I just saw where Maggie Keene is painting a mural at the State Fair as we are talking right now. So what else is going on? Oh my gosh. I'm also in a couple weeks going to be up in Kingman for their Route 66 Fest. So that's going to be a lot of fun. After Thanksgiving, we are doing our dinner and a seance down in Bisbee. And then I'm so excited. We're doing a burlesque show, an educational burlesque show coming up in March at the Orpheum. We're doing a photo shoot for that, I think, in a couple weeks. So that's going to be exciting. Now, I see some of you have already found the chat. You can always reach out through that, or, you can also reach out to me on Facebook, Instagram, email, or even through my website. It's all good because I love to hear from you all. Now, it would not be a happy hour without a beverage. And so tonight, our cocktail is called the Joan. It's got a little bit of coffee, some fancy liqueur. PJ's always trying to test me because I'm like, Borghetti, espresso liquor, because it's fancy liqueur, as well as some Uncle Nearest whiskey, Cointreau, Orgeat, and Amaro, Amazatone. I don't know how to say that, but what I love about PJ is he just puts it all in a great little cup. And so it's a coffee cup, and I just have to pour it into my coffee. And so there we have our Joan. It could be a simple cup of coffee, but it is not oh so simple. And you'll find out why that's important. Oh, that's really nice. Not like I'm shocked, because PJ always comes up with some great cocktails. So it's probably a little over the top with all those things in it. He almost put whipped cream on it, but he said, if you had to have the little squirt thing, you probably would be wearing the coffee, not drinking it. And I was like, yeah, that's exactly what would happen. So PJ, thank you for not making me squirt whipped cream out into this. So our next bit is called Little Arizona, where we're going to talk about a town in Arizona. So, I talk about being from New York, but I really grew up in a little tiny town in Indiana of about 25 people. So we are going to talk about Ehrenberg, Arizona, a population just over 1,000 people out in Yuma County. It's literally right on the border. And so one of the things I think is cool is it's actually named for Ehrenberg, the man who surveyed it. And when it originally started, it was called Mineral City, and it had a population of about 16 men with tents, crude huts, and things like that. And so then Mr. Ehrenberg then was actually murdered at some point, but the Goldwater family had already opened up a store in Ehrenberg. And so, actually, not Ehrenberg, it was in La Paz. And supposedly, one morning they woke up and realized the river had taken a completely different direction. And so they needed to go down and be closer to the river. And so the entire town picked up itself and moved. And they named it Ehrenberg in honor of their friend who had been killed a couple years earlier. Now, what can you do in Ehrenberg? Well, you can go visit the cemetery, which is kind of cool. It actually looks a lot better than it did, where the bodies, well, the folks who were interned there are now just covered with rock. But it was an interesting place to go visit. I didn't, as I was researching, I kept finding out more and more that I should have done while I was there. It literally is right off the 10. I mean, we're talking like a mile, maybe not even that. And so this is an old building that now is basically just a billboard. Was a store at one point. And it was known for a lot of stagecoaches would go through that area. It also had a water landing. So supposedly there are adobe ruins to be found. I didn't see them, but I want to get back out there. You can also go to the Cibola National Wildlife Refuge, which is a huge kind of place where a variety of birds, including a large concentration of sandhill cranes, can be viewed. Now, one of the things it's like I just learned, and I wish I had, now it's in California. So, but I'm like, but it's really cool. It is the Blythe Itaglios. And so it is really these humongous figures that are drawn into the earth. They have since been fenced off because you can see a little bit of some of the tire tracks from ATVs getting it out there and kind of ruin these things or just destroying them. But I definitely want to get out there and take a look at these humongous figures. They're not quite sure why they were done or even how long ago. There's been various reports, but they are ancient, probably done well before even like possibly even when like the Hugum were here in the valley. And, they are larger than life. And, some might say that about our guest being a little larger than life. So let me bring on my friend Tony. Hello. Oh, wait a minute. I can't hear you. Let's see. You're muted. You're not muted on my end. Oh, actually, you are muted on my end. I don't. Oh, there we go. Okay. So, nope. Still can't hear you. Let's see. Yeah, exactly. Go ahead and jump off and jump back on because I don't know why. I mean, you were working 10 minutes ago. So, all right. That's the fun thing of doing things live is you never quite what's going to happen with technology. And so, well, I'm going to take a moment to have a sip of the Joan. And let's see if this. No. Still not working, and that is so weird. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Let's see. Seeing if I have anything on my end that I can do. Let's see. That is so weird. I know exactly. It's like, yay, live productions. All right, let me take you off again, bring you back on. All right. Nothing has changed. Unmute mic. There we go. All right. No, absolutely nothing coming through. Bum, bum, bum. Bum. Hmm. I'm going to try jumping off again, and we'll see. Um, and actually, if you can go via the email, because if he's just doing it from his phone, that might be the issue. Let's see. All right. All right. So are you linking from your phone or from the email? Oh. Wow, I've never had this happen. Bum, bum, bum. Let's see. All right. Bum, bum. So yeah, no, can you hear me? Okay. That is so weird. Are you using the microphone on the laptop? Okay, because no, it was working earlier, so I don't know why suddenly it's not working now. Um, do you want to try doing this maybe on your phone? So I do apologize, but sometimes it was like, I mean, we were just chatting away a few minutes ago, and suddenly it's like, oh, wait a minute, that's not a working. And so let's see.
Better for you?
Oh, there we go.
Well, how about that?
Technology. Who knew?
All right. Well, I will set this here and talk to you this way.
All right. Very good. So, Tony, tell us a little about you. People may not know who you are.
Yeah, no one's going to know who I am. But I'm one of Phoenix's local gay comics. I went to Central High, and then I did the coolest thing. I moved to Los Angeles, and I lived in Los Angeles for 30 years. So I'm better than you. And then I moved back, 5 years ago, because Phoenix people are the greatest people, and I just realized that I wanted to have a more standard 9 to 5 kind of a life experience. And you're not really going to have that working. I was working as a television producer there in Los Angeles, and that becomes such a grind. Yeah, it really has to be the only thing in your life that you care about. And I decided I wanted to have some other priorities.
Nice. Well, and there's a growing comedy scene, which is really kind of incredible.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
it's just by growing by leaps and bounds. I mean, you were just recently on the stage with Jinx Monsoon.
Yeah, exactly. I got to open for Jinx Monsoon and Taylor Tomlinson and Adam Ray and so many of the big comics that have come to town. I get to go out and do a half an hour before them. And yeah, we have a really great comedy scene here in Phoenix. We've got Stand Up Live, and then CB Live, and we have the Tempe Improv, of course. Which are all really owned by one company. So that's one group of people that do all.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, they're all owned by one group. And then there's House of Comedy also in Desert Ridge. So, and then not to mention so many little bars that do like a comedy night and things like that. So it really is. It's really great.
Indeed. All right. Well, we're going to have a couple photos to help kind of explain who you are and how you got here again. All right. So who is this lovely woman?
Well, yeah, speaking of the Joan, that to me is the one and only Joan that matters. That's Joan Rivers. And I was really lucky. I got to work with her for her for the last 5 years of her life. I was her head writer and her opening act. I used to open for Joan in 5,000 seat theaters, but this is nice too, Marshall. But it, I get to, would go out before Joan at these giant theaters with her cue cards there on the ground. And I would look at there and think, you people have no idea what she's about to come out here and say. You think you know, and it's even worse than you're expecting. It's going to be so crazy. And yeah, so for 5 years, I got to travel all over the United States and Mexico and the UK working for her. And we, of course, had the hit show Fashion Police. So that was really a great experience. And I was on her reality show, Joan and Melissa, Joan Knows Best. And that's actually a picture in the upper right-hand corner is a picture of me and my writer's assistant, Brianne, and Joan in the New York apartment. That is the Gold Leaf Palace.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And the middle picture, you'll see she has a cup of coffee, and at Starbucks, they literally wrote Jone. And she was like, take a picture of this because it doesn't matter if you've been famous for 60 damn years. There's still going to be some 19-year-old who has no idea who the hell you are. And so you can never take your fame for granted. She was the greatest. I have a million stories about her. She was wonderful.
Oh, and I have a feeling we might get to hear some of those.
Mm-hmm.
And so many other things. Oh my gosh. Okay, so we always do trivia here on Happy Hour. And so they're multiple choice. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go through the questions and answers. We'll take a little bit of an Arizona music break and then come back with the answers of those questions. So people can keep track of, I know I've got friends who have a special notebook that they use just for trivia for Happy Hour. I've got one friend that keeps sending me photos of his leg or his arm that he's been writing the answers on. So whatever makes you happy. Luckily edited down, so I don't get to see everything. So, all right. So our first question, what was the restaurant where the servers dressed in costumes of famous characters?
Yeah.
Was it A, Green Gables, B, Bobby McGee's, C, Flanagan's, or Rustler's Roost? Now, I know I've only been to one of those restaurants, Rustler's Roost, but the rest of them I don't know. So I'm looking forward to seeing what everybody answers. All right. Question 2. At one point in time, the Metro Center complex had more screens than any one location than anywhere in the Southwest. How many screens were there? Was it 21 screens? Was it 25 screens? C, 18 screens, or D, 12? Still, that's a lot of screens.
You have to remember they had 3. They had outside of the mall, there were 2 different buildings that had a bunch of screens, and then inside the mall was their theater. So they had a lot.
Oh, so okay, so there were multiple. Okay, so it wasn't all in one theater.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So question 3. What was the 24-hour restaurant at I-17 and Northern where you could enjoy half slices of pie to maximize tasting? Was it A, Coco's, B, Marie Callender's, C, Village Inn, or D, Busy Bee Cafe? All right. So for those of you that would go and have a half slice of pie, I'm intrigued to find out why a half slice of pie, and then probably a tab to wash it all down with. All right, question 4. What was the Mexican food restaurant that you had an all-you-can-eat menu and little flags you raised when you wanted the server's attention? Was it A, Pancho's Mexican Buffet, B, Rosita's Mexican Kitchen, C, Macayo's Mexican Restaurant, or D, Ajo Al's Mexican Cafe? So which do you think one of those was an all-you-could-eat, but you had to do something to get the server's attention? Oh my gosh. All right. Oh, and question 5. What bank introduced the ATM to the Valley, calling them, oh my, the ugly teller, All right. So was it A, First Interstate, B, United Bank, C, Thunderbird Bank, or D, Golden West Financial? So which one of those introduced ATMs to the Valley using the term ugly teller? All right. Question 6. What was the record store at Central Avenue that had the oversized custom painted album covers on the outside of the building? A, Sam Goody, B, Circles Records and Tapes, C, Central Music Store, or D, Camelot Music? All right. So which one of those do you think was on Central and had huge album covers outside of it? Question 7. What was the members only grocery store that had other departments such as bakery, housewares, electronics, and clothing? Was it A, Smitty's, B, Jimco, C, Price Club, or D, Sam's Club? Oh, I don't know. This is going to be interesting. I've heard some of those names, but all right. So question 8. When the Phoenician Resort was built, it had a flower shop. Before that, the shop was in A, Christown Mall, B, the Good Samaritan gift shop, C, an old photo map booth. Oh, we'll see how many people even know what an old photo map booth is. Oh, okay. Or D, the entrance of the Phoenix Zoo, right next to the rabbits. All right. Question 9. The Joan Rivers Joan Rivers came to Phoenix during the height of her Tonight Show fame. What venue did she play? A, Celebrity Theater, B, Veterans Memorial Coliseum, C, Big Surf, D, Symphony Hall, or E, the Orpheum Theater? I know that's a lot of choices, but only one of them is correct. And then our last question is, what LGBT magazine no longer exists? Is it A, Echo, B, Advocate, C, Ion AZ, or D, Out Magazine? Well, you are trying to lock in all your final answers, and I see Lola's quite active on the keyboard tonight. So we're going to have a lot of fun tonight. And so while you're all locking in those final answers, we're going to talk a little bit about Rusty Warren. Now, you might not know the name, but you probably, she made some major changes. She is known as the birth mother of the sexual revolution. So she originally came to us from the East Coast as a classically trained pianist, and she was playing at a place called the Pump Room. And then they got into a lawsuit with a place in Chicago, so they decided to just close in the top of the U, and it became the Pump Room. And so she has 15 albums to her credit. Her hit song was called Knockers Up, as well as Bounce Your Boobies were her two big hits. And so she passed away about the age of 91 a couple of years ago, but she idolized Sophie Tucker and actually was able to have lunch with her at the Biltmore, which is a story all onto itself, as well as she did hang out with Joan Rivers, Phyllis Diller, and Toady Fields when they were all working in Vegas. All right. So now who's ready for some answers? All right. So what was the restaurant where the servers dressed in costume of famous characters? Bobby McGee's Real.
Oh my gosh, it was right there by Metro Center, that the 17 and like Dunlap. And it had, the sign was a bathtub with a mannequin of a man in it. And he had a top hat and his foot was up on the other end of the tub and there was a bird on his foot. And it was built like a big house. And all of the servers would be Superman or Wonder Woman or Zorro. And then they had like an Irish character named Patio Furniture. And I just remember as a kid, every year for my birthday's in December, my family used to say, you can pick any restaurant you want to go to, for like your fancy birthday dinner. And Bobby McGee's and Red Lobster were like the fanciest things I could imagine in my life. So if we didn't go to the Red Lobster, we would go to the Bobby McGee. And it was like crappy, prime rib, and the salad bar was a bathtub that was filled with ice and had all the stuff in it. And I remember a lot of the tables had toilets as seats, like they were old toilets that, with the seat down, that's what you would sit on. And it was just like, when you think of TGI Fridays and how they have to like wear their buttons and have their flair and be energetic, it was that times 100. Those people probably hated working there, although it was the cocaine 80s. So maybe, they probably made a fortune. It was always busy, but that was, oh my gosh, as a young person in the 80s, that was the coolest place you could go for dinner.
Wow, it's like, I know like Bill Johnson's Big Apple, they dressed in costume, but no one's ever talked about the servers at Bobby McGee's. I've seen the bathtubs like in thrift stores. It's like, I'll see those, but I didn't know that was what the sign looked like as well.
Yep, bathtubs and toilets. You could get a drink that came in a little porcelain toilet souvenir. Just so crazy. But
so like every teenage boy's humor.
Right, exactly. And this was before Ed DeBevick's came to town, and it's a much better version of it with the 50s diner theme, but we're going to have servers that are a little sassy and kind of banter with you. Bobby McGee's was much safer. But again, to a young person who would someday go into show business, oh my gosh, I thought it was the coolest.
And I see Ryan ask, and I don't think Bobby McGee's and Bobby Q's are the same thing.
No,
I don't know who owns Bobby Q's, but
I do want to say that they may be related in some tangential way by the investment group or something like that, because Bobby Q's is in that location now on I-17.
Oh, okay.
Bobby Q's has another location that I know of on like I want to say it's at like 40th Street in Camelback or something over in that part of town.
Okay. All right. Oh, and there I go. I cover up half the question with the answer. All right. So we know there were lots of theater screens at Metro Center. How many were there?
There were 21 at one point. There were 3 inside the mall, and then outside of the mall there was an 8 and a 10 screen that were separate buildings. But the 3 inside Metro Center Mall was located right next to Farrell's Ice Cream Parlor, over the old ice rink.
Oh, the look at the airplane.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my gosh! So you went to wait a minute. So you went to the coffee shop that looked at the airplane.
Oh yeah, of course. and so, but that would be the one where you bought your ticket way out, sort of at the front of the, in the mall, basically over the ice rink. And then you had to go down the hallway into the actual where the screens were. There was once you passed the snack bar, there was no regulating what room you went into. And where I snuck in and saw Porky's, where I snuck in and saw Blue Lagoon. And let me tell you something, as a young person who was not understanding what was happening in their body, Christopher Atkins in that loincloth in Blue Lagoons made me understand things that to this I credit him for. And I have to tell you, Christopher Atkins, it's so funny because I'm 52. And so he's, what is he, maybe 10 years older than I am, right? And he, for like my 35th birthday when I lived in Los Angeles, a friend of mine was at a party and Christopher Atkins was there. And my friend goes up to him and says, I know this is so weird for you as a heterosexual man, but my friend Tony talks to anyone that will listen. He talks about how you made him gay. You in Blue Lagoon was the thing. And Christopher Atkins goes, I have a whole generation of young gay men that have come up to me and said that movie was so formative to them. And he goes, let's call Tony and wish him happy birthday. And I have a voicemail from Christopher Atkins saying, hey, Tony, happy birthday. You're never going to believe who this is. It's Christopher Atkins, and I'm getting told that I made you gay. And if that's true, it's an honor. And I hope you're a good one. Aww. It was the nicest thing for a celebrity to do. And so it's really funny how, but that's Metro Center Cinemas to me is always going to be sneaking in to see Blue Lagoon and Porky's and Fast Times at Ridgemont High. And I found out many years later by someone that had worked there who was much older than I, that they intentionally would always have a PG or a G-rated film so that kids could sneak in to the movies they wanted to see And that really helped maintain ticket sales and snack bar. So yeah, we used to go to the, you would get dropped off at the mall on a Saturday and your mother would give you $20. You would buy one admission to whatever Disney movie there was. And then 4 movies that day. Wow, it was a different time.
All right. What was the 24-hour restaurant at I-17 in Northern where you could enjoy a half slice of pie?
Village Inn used to have half slices of pie, and they're great. I'd say their pies are better than Coco's or Marie Callender's, and I'll fight anybody's on it. But they used to do a half-size slice. So you would go and you would get like 4 half slices. So you could have a little lemon meringue, but then a little chocolate supreme and a little of this one. And then you would get French fries to have something salty. And again, I just remember as high school theater kids with not a lot of money, we could go there. And if everybody had $5 or $6 or $8, I'm sure we weren't tipping any of the servers because we were, didn't realize then. But boy, your money went a long way at that. Yeah.
For a half slice of pie.
Yeah.
Oh, and I'm hitting wrong buttons over here. All right.
Oh, I love this one.
All right. So what was the Mexican restaurant that had an all-you-can-eat menu and little flags that you raised when you wanted their server's attention?
It was so clever. And you think about all the rude people that you see in restaurants, barking at their servers nowadays. They should go back to this. But at Pancho's Mexican Buffet, it wasn't even a buffet because you sat down and they just would keep bringing you more of what you wanted. So it was really more all you can eat. But on the sugar caddy with the salt and pepper and the little metal wire rack, there was a flagpole that went up like, 18 inches and a little Mexican country of Mexico flag. And you could do the little pulley and raise the flag. And that's how the server would know that you wanted their attention. It's kind of like at Buco de Beppo, they do it with the little wooden dowel, like red on one side and green on the other, to let the server know. But as a kid in the 80s, the technology of getting to raise the flag to get the server, I mean, that was better than any iPad back in the day. So yes, I have fond memories of the multiple locations of Pancho's Buffet.
Now, so quick question. So Andres is wondering, so the Village Inn by Kmart and Marine Calendars up on the 17?
Yes, that's exactly the one location that I was talking about. It was in the Kmart parking lot, and they actually only leveled the building just a couple years ago, but it was empty for 15 or 20 years.
Oh, I didn't know that's what was in that building.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I know the state was gonna maybe do something with the Kmart. I think at one point they were trying to do sort of like a shelter for people that were experiencing homelessness. That was going to be like a service, building for that or something. And everything, people don't want these things in their neighborhoods, but they have to be somewhere. And so they always end up getting sort of in the 11th hour, they get canceled. But it was really an opportunity for Phoenix to do some good. And I just think the politicians just caved at the last minute.
All right. So question 5, what bank introduced the ATM and called them ugly tellers?
I remember this so distinctly. And in my memory, when you asked me to come up with some trivia questions about the 80s, I was 100% sure it was First Interstate Bank. And it was only in researching things online that it turned out that it was United Bank. I would have got that question wrong, and I would have been, oh no, I would be typing right now going, you idiots, it's First Interstate Bank. But, the memory of an old person, right? But yes, it just speaks to the sexism that we all grew up in. And I think we have to take moments like this to celebrate the progress that has been made. I mean, the idea that a gay guy is sitting here online now talking about, growing up as a gay kid in the 80s in Phoenix, and I can have a career and not be fearful. Rusty Warren, my God, I did a show with Rusty Warren when I was 16 years old, and I didn't realize what a huge icon she had.
Oh.
And she told me that she moved to Arizona because she couldn't be a gay woman. And here she could feel safe and like she could have her partner and live a life. But she essentially had to leave show business because her whole persona was as this body female, but that was also very sort of hypersexualized, sort of a Mae West kind of a trope. And all of that would have gone away if people knew that she actually was a lesbian. And so, you know, Knockers Up is about, back in the old Catskill days, people wouldn't clap. They actually had these little mallets, these little hammers that were called knockers. And they would tap them on the table when they enjoyed the entertainer. And it was very, very, and so she used to come out and do this double entendre that was put your knockers up, that was also, because, you know, in the early 60s, that was racy.
Right.
And she was incredible. And it's so funny that I think back on her and Joan and Toady Fields and these Phyllis Diller, these women of a certain generation. And I mean, I remember once being with Joan and her saying, of the group, Toady was the funniest. She said Toady was funnier than all of us. She should have been the biggest star, but she was so unhealthy and she lost her foot and she just couldn't perform. And, you know, she just wouldn't control her diabetes, I think is what it was. And so her health never allowed her to be the huge star that she could have been. But Joan openly said she was funnier than the other three of them by a mile. It's incredible. Wow. You asking about these questions makes you sort of remember things. But yes, The Ugly Teller was the original ATMs. It was incredibly sexist, that men used to go into the bank to look at the cute young thing behind the counter and flirt with her. And, you know, and then The Ugly Teller was the idea of, if you don't have time to go in and look at the hot piece of ass behind the counter, you can use the ugly teller out in the parking lot. I mean, that's literally how it all came to be.
That's just shocking that we even would have made, I mean, by today's standards. I mean, I know we're using different filters than they used then, but today you could not do that.
No, I mean, when's the last time you heard someone called a stewardess? I remember growing up, it was only female flight attendants and you called them stewardess. And now that would be, you know, such an insult.
Right. I mean, it was, I just flew to Denver to go to Meow Wolf, and it was men and women.
Right. Flight attendants. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. All right. What was the record store on Central that had oversized custom painted album covers outside the building?
Yeah, man, Circles Records and Tape. And this is a picture that's very recently, before they changed the building to whatever it is currently. I mean, the brick
it's now a big condo building.
Yeah, but that whole brick side wall used to have these 10-foot by 10-foot painted copies of the album covers. And when you think about the 80s and you think about the artists like Culture Club and Boy George, that was my freshman year of high school in 1983. And the idea that this man was doing this sort of gender fluid, I guess we would call it now. But I mean, Boy George was male, and yet he wore makeup and girls' clothes and did the, you know, and that was a lot, you know, for the 80s, because it wasn't like a David Bowie glam rock. It was much more sort of towing that line between both male and female. And you think about
the amount of makeup that he was wearing and doing the whole kabuki, I mean, with the lips and everything else. So yeah.
Singing Do You Really Want to Hurt Me at a time when the answer was yes. You know, a lot of people did. Then I remember that Loverboy album with the red leather pants that was just a photo of just the crotch. And, you know, to see that blown up 10-foot by 10-foot on the side of Circles Records, we used to go, and, you know, in those days, you would go to a record store and they just had headphones everywhere that were plugged in to those stations, and you would listen to records of artists that you hadn't heard of. You didn't find out about artists the way unless they were being played on the radio, but you didn't have a visual component, you know. And so album covers were such a huge, you would buy albums just because the album cover art was so.
I still do. When I flip through the thrift stores, I'm always like, that's a great cover. I'm going to get that. I don't care what it sounds like.
And so Circles Records and Tapes down at Central and like Roosevelt, it used to have those giant hand-painted billboards, and you just thank God they would paint over it, I'm sure, every couple of weeks and use those same giant whatever canvases. But you go, what would those be worth now if you had like a 10-foot by 10-foot Thriller album cover? You know, or
yeah,
incredible. But you know, it's in those days, it was, we thought albums would be forever. We didn't realize
another making a comeback. I mean, it's like I mean, and you know, the other thing I think is interesting is that growing up in the Midwest, going to the mall, we didn't have a place where you could put headphones on and hear different music. It was, you just heard what was on the radio. So the
Right.
fact that you could listen to things outside of your normal kind of
Yeah.
top
You didn't have to
40.
buy it. You sit there for hours listening to whole
Wow.
albums. Incredible.
Yeah. Now I can see why people like went, oh my gosh, it's like Central. I mean, we would talk about it.
Or would give you recommendations. You know, they would get to know you and what you had purchased, and they'd say, well, if you like this, you have to know this artist. And they would tell you about people, you know, I mean, they were, of course, stoners, but I mean, you know, they really knew how to hook you up. And they would say, well, if you like, you know, Culture Club, you've got to know about Bronski Beat. You've got to know about Depeche Mode. You've got to know about these other, you know, it was incredible.
Oh my gosh. So really, almost, I mean, kind of like going to a bookstore and them recommending books, but it's like,
Yeah.
that would have been life changing.
Truly was. When you know, again, as a young, so much of your story as a young queer person is not understanding how all of these things sort of fit together and to make it sort of make sense. And I think for so many young queer people, that music of the 80s was a place that allowed them to sort of explore how they felt about things or feel safe or, you know, answer questions. And so, yeah, it's so, I think back of the Tower Records that used to be outside of Christown Mall. Well, it's not even Christown Mall now, it's Spectrum Center. But I mean, that Tower Records was such an important place for me to go and be around, you know, people that were weird, and I felt safe. So it's pretty cool to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, that was, you know, it was such a different era.
Absolutely.
And I love how Tressa is talking about, while she's listening to us, she is rearranging her record albums.
Oh, gorgeous.
Which I think is hilarious. And then Francine talks about, I know I did this, you would hold your tape recorder up to the TV.
Yeah, of course.
Especially during like Bandstand, because that's where you heard the stuff you weren't hearing on the radio.
Solid Gold, that countdown.
Oh my gosh. Oh, I forgot about the Solid Gold countdown.
Yes. My father was a man who loved women and loved marrying women. He didn't like staying married to them, but he loved marrying women. And his fourth wife was a Solid Gold dancer. And she had been in the movie Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. I know. And so when I met her, to hear her stories about shooting Solid Gold on the Paramount lot, and how the producers had a silver bowl that was like an ashtray that was just filled with cocaine, and they just kept them skinny and energetic because they would work, you know, 14-hour days, and those girls were dancing around in shimmery tights and high heels, you know, and just
wow.
Yeah, it was a very different time.
Indeed. All right. What was the members only grocery store that also had bakery, housewares, electronics, and clothing?
Gemco was such a paradise. I think it cost you $1 for a lifetime membership. And they took it very seriously, much like Costco today. To get in the building, you had to show that membership card. Now, it didn't have your picture on it, so anybody could have just given anyone their card. So it was an idiotic plan. But I guess because they were a membership organization, I think their sales tax was lower than other grocery stores, and they had their own store brand, which was really great. I know my mother used to buy us all their store brand stuff, which I think is the same Safeway brand that we have today, that Lady Luck is. But yes, and then they also had all the different departments in a department store. And you have to understand, you know, my mother and father, they got pregnant with me their senior year of high school accidentally. And so when I'm 4 years old, my mother's barely 22 and has this little sissy 4-year-old kid. And I just think I'm personality plus and I'm the funniest. And I remember so clearly going to Gemco, and they had those circular clothing racks, and I would go in them and do like a little show, like that was like my own little theater, and those were the curtains. And I just remember my mother screaming one day over the loudspeaker, "Tony, where are you, Tony?" You know, and probably curse words. And because she had been looking for me for, I don't know, an hour, 30 minutes, however long it was. and was having a complete 22-year-old meltdown. So finally, they just gave her the fucking loudspeaker and let her scream my name out. And I just remember thinking that was the day I was going to be murdered, because she was so angry that I had frightened her so badly. Gemco, with all the different departments, and then they also, Arizona people will remember, because of the way air conditioning worked, where these stores that had very large doors, entrance and exits, they would have the really big fans above and below to keep the air conditioning sort of in. I think it's like how Costco is today. Well, Gemco had this metal grate, and the fans were below it, and the air was going up. And it's just so weird how, again, as an adult gay person, you look back and you see all of these signs when you were very, very young. Because I remember being 4 years old and going to Gemco and walking over that grate with the wind, and in my mind being Marilyn in the dress, and just the wind and my hair blowing, and just loving to stand there at the entrance of the Gemco, which was the most public place you could probably be to embarrass your, 22-year-old mother. But Gemco, yes, it was a wonderful, wonderful store, and I don't know whatever happened to that company, but my goodness, they for young families on a budget, that was certainly the place to shop.
Wow, but I can just see you. I mean, that updraft and your hair and everything else, and just
Incredible.
putting on a floor show.
Yeah.
All right. When the Phoenician Resort was built, it had a flower shop. Before that, where was the flower shop?
Yeah, my family owned Accent with Flowers, which actually started in the gift shop of Good Samaritan Hospital. And it was a tiny little operation where they would take a yellow chrysanthemum and glue little googly eyes on it, and take a piece of black pipe cleaner and make a smiley face and put a bow in it and a little bud vase. And that was like $6.99. And this was the kind of crap that you would buy if you had a loved one, having a surgery at Good Samaritan Hospital, or like 6 carnations and little vase, for like $10. And it just started with that. And then I remember when the flower shop grew a little and got its FTD affiliation and was able to do FTD orders, which was like the big time. And over the years, my uncle, who was gay, obviously he owned a flower shop, was doing, big society parties and stuff. And so when the Phoenician Resort was built, they asked him to have the flower shop there. And so he was doing all of those incredible events at the Phoenician. But, it's funny how things start from humble beginnings, because I remember being a little kid and never being able to go to school on Valentine's Day because I was in the back cleaning the thorns off roses and, changing the water out of chrysanthemums and stuff. So yes, it all started in Good Samaritan Hospital.
Wow. All right. So question 9, sadly, we're coming to the end. Oh no. But okay. So Joan Rivers came to Phoenix during the height of her Tonight Show fame. What venue did she play?
This made me so excited that you were able to find that ticket stub. It's so incredible to me because, my gay uncle who had the flower shop had introduced me to Joan Rivers when I was 14, 15 years old. And she was hosting the Tonight Show. And then she did the album that you showed earlier, What Becomes a Semi-Legend Most. And it had all the Liz Taylor jokes. Liz Taylor is so fat. She puts mayonnaise on an aspirin. Remember, I asked her, what do you want on your hamburger? She said a hot dog. Like all those incredible jokes. And so I paid my own money and I bought one ticket to sit in the balcony of Symphony Hall. But I went to the flower shop and they let me make the tackiest, most hideous presentation bouquet. And my plan was, I'm in the back row of the balcony. If I have flowers, they'll let me come to the stage. And then once I get down front and give Joan flowers, she's going to see me and know we belong together. And she's going to say, I don't know, stay on stage with me, be my best friend. I don't know what I thought was going to happen, but I thought we were going to become best friends. And what really happened was I went down and security was like, you don't have a ticket. And I said, I'm giving her flowers. And they let me give her the flowers. And she said, thanks, kid. And then security pulled me away. And I had to go back to my shitty seat in the balcony. And I was furious, heartbroken. And so it's so weird that then all those years later, I mean, literally almost 30 years later, I was producing television shows for the E! Channel. And one day they called and said, we're bringing back Fashion Police with Joan Rivers. And she doesn't like any of the commercials that we wrote. And she told us to get 3 funny gay guys to Melissa's house tomorrow and to write stuff. So can you go? And I had seen her probably 6 or 8 times in my life, but never really met her. And I got to go to Melissa's house. So I stayed up all night writing jokes.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Incredible. This was finally it, And I went in there and the other 2 guys didn't seem to say much. And I'm like pitching jokes and I'm like, Fashion Police, just because it zips doesn't mean it fits. Like I've got these like zingery jokes and she's laughing. And so after about 15 minutes, she says to the other guys, you guys, thank you so much. Here's $500. Here's $500. Tony, will you please stay? And I realize that like my childhood idol is going to bawl me out and is going to point out that I have been so rude. I didn't let anybody else talk. I've just really been pushy and obnoxious. And I know that I'm just about to get, a spanking, right? So the other guys leave. And as the second the door closes, Joan turns to me and she goes, you're my new head writer. Let's get to work. And she knew instantly that I just sort of understood her voice and her point of view. And we sat there and rewrote new commercials. And she said, come to the set tomorrow and we'll shoot them. And she told everyone, this is the head writer of Fashion Police. And the network, I had worked on one TV show at that point. The network had to send me the contract as the head writer. And over the years, the show ran for 8 years. Every year, she made them give me a raise and a title change. So ultimately, I was co-executive producer of Fashion Police. And I talked to her on a Wednesday night after she had done a little show in New York. And she was very excited that she was having a procedure the next morning, Thursday morning, where they were going to put the camera down her throat just to make sure there were no polyps or anything that could be potentially cancerous. She did that twice a year. And she went in and her throat seized during the procedure. And the doctor did not have a medication that should have been available on the cart, didn't have it ready. And they actually didn't even have it in the clinic. And so it was only when the ambulances arrived 18 minutes later that they were able to give her the drug to relax her throat muscles to get air back to her brain. And at that point, there was, she was never going to really wake up again. And I mean, I have 1/9 of Joan's ashes. I actually have them right here. I have Joan's ashes in my home. She was a remarkable woman. She was a panther on stage, just an animal. And off stage, she was the sweetest Jewish grandmother you ever met. Just every time I saw her, she had a folded up $5 bill that she would slide to me. And I would say, I don't need, what are you doing? And she would say, I just want you to have money in your pocket. And I would say, you pay me a fortune. Like, you pay me so much money. I don't need $5. But she just, she couldn't stop herself. She was the sweetest little old lady until you put a microphone in her hand. And then she just became this force of nature. I really wish people understood that off stage, she was the most appropriate and the sweetest and the gentlest and the kindest. And she was so proper. I mean, Betsy Bloomingdale and Barbara Walters were her 2 best friends. And you know what I mean? Like, these are not.
Wow. I didn't realize that.
No, she was in the New York high society elite. And Betsy Bloomingdale once a year would take her for lunch to this, country club that still didn't allow Jewish people. And she would take Joan in once a year just to watch everybody light their hair on fire, and that was Betsy Bloomingdale's gift to Joan once a year, was to have lunch there just to upset everyone. But she was so kind and so lovely. I mean, every time I was in New York City with Joan and somebody would come up on the street and say, oh my God, Joan Rivers, I love you so much. And she would say, oh, that's nice. Take a picture. And they'd say, oh, that necklace is so great. And she'd say, oh, it's QVC, $49. And she would take it off and give it to them. And then as they were walking away, she would say, that bitch has a story to tell at dinner parties for the rest of her life. And she would open her purse and pull the same necklace out and put it on. Because she got dressed in the morning, she would just put 4 extras in her purse because she understood what a thrill I'm giving people for $50. Like, that's the fun of fame.
Wow.
You can do that to people and give them a story to tell. And so she just loved being famous because of how happy it could make people.
Wow, but I just love that. It's like that she just assumed that she was going to give all these houses away, so she just kept
Yeah.
loading up more. And
Yeah.
oh my gosh.
I mean, she was just the most remarkable woman. Every time she signed my paycheck, she would write, "I love you, kiddo," or, you know, "Thanks for the great jokes this week. You're the best. I'd be nothing without you." Yeah, Joan, you weren't funny until you met me, when you were already, you know, 75 years old. And you know, she met my parents, you know, and she would just say to them, "This is all because of your son. He's the brains of the opera." And it was like, why are you? We all know that's not true, but you're just being so generous, you know.
Wow.
Yeah, she was amazing.
And that's stuff you never hear the other side of.
It's true. Listen, I get it, because comedy has changed so much, and you can't do the kinds of jokes that Joan did now. It would be called bullying or punching down, or it would just be cruel. And, you know, and I respect anyone who feels like that. And I wrote some of the cruelest jokes, things that I would never say to someone. But I will tell you, Miley Cyrus was one of the people we were the meanest to. And we called Miley a whore in every possible way you could, right? And when Joan was in the hospital after, when, you know, they kept her body alive for like a week in a coma, Miley tweeted, "Joan, I need you to come and, you know, call me a whore again. Like, you have to come back." Katy Perry tweeted, "What's the point of dressing like an asshole if you're not going to be here to tell me I'm dressing like an asshole?" Like, it really was, for a lot of celebrities, they felt like they didn't make it until Joan Rivers was making fun of what they wore. And I know, you know, fat jokes are not appropriate, and I get all of that. But a lot of the people that Joan was the meanest to really got that that was part of being a celebrity, and they really were, you know, okay with it. And so you know, I'm glad that she got to go out at 81 years old on top. When she had television shows, she was selling out every show, because comedy did get a little more sensitive now, and she would really resist that. And Joan would have been canceled 10 times this year if she were still with us. So it's, you know, it's probably better to just remember how great she was, and, you know, let her go out on a high note.
But you know, it's also interesting because it's like, so you've got like what she was doing versus now. There's all these documentaries you can find on Netflix that talk about how like comedians are kind of like the canary in the mine.
Yeah.
And that people are getting canceled left and right for saying their beliefs or something to try and get people to think about things in a different way. So
Yeah.
it's really putting comedy under a different microscope.
You know, I go on stage and do comedy, right? And so I don't think that I have a blank check. And I don't think that anyone who gets a mic should feel like they have free reign to say absolutely anything they want without ramifications. I'm prepared when I do a Trump joke in Arizona. I am prepared for people to yell at me in the lobby after the show because they don't like my take on things. And so, you know, I don't really believe, I can't name a comic that actually was canceled. Louis C.K. did a bunch of really terrible things that he admitted, and he's back and he's selling out arenas. So he maybe had 2 years where he didn't work much, but, you know, his kids were still able to go to private school. So I think that sometimes people get caught up in, oh, people are losing their livelihoods, they're getting canceled. And I think really more than anything, comedy, we're clowns, we're prostitutes, and we're just here to serve the client, you know? And if you're not making the room laugh, then you're not doing your job as a comic. And sometimes comedians get all caught up in, well, we need to make people think and change minds. And that's great when that happens. But let's remember that the main job is just to make people forget their own troubles and just laugh for a little while. And so, you know, I tend to think that people that have bad things happen to them because of things they said on stage deserved the things that happened to them 9 times out of 10.
All right. And our last question is, what LGBTQ magazine no longer exists?
Well, I wasn't even aware of this until you pointed it out. But yes, Echo magazine, and look at that young man on the cover. Not a gray hair on his head. But yes, listen, Echo magazine was a great resource for queer people and allies. And I think that, you know, what's sad about so many of these publications going under and disappearing is, you know, they're generally free, and it really does serve a purpose in the community to let gay people know not only what's going on at different bars or venues around town in terms of entertainment and stuff, but also the plumbers that advertise in that kind of a magazine are plumbers that are going to not make you feel uncomfortable if you have a clogged sink and you need to invite them into your home. The restaurants that advertise there are restaurants that are not going to make you feel uncomfortable sitting there with a same-sex partner on a date. So I think that there's just access to safe space that's really important in those magazines, and it makes me sad when they go away. I'm glad that Ion is still around. I'm sorry that Echo is not, because the people that worked there, I knew so many of them, and they really were doing a great service, you know, to the community.
Right. Now, I always like to end with asking people how they did on trivia. And so, you know, I always like to also point out that's like, you know, it's not how many you got right or wrong, but oh my gosh, look at the behind the scenes of Joan Rivers we got. I mean, I learned about Gemco, about, I mean, oh my gosh, about Bobby McGee's, which I knew a little bit about, but learning so much more. And so that's one of the things I always love about this is it's always a chance not for just the audience, but we're all participating in this learning. So that's really the fun of it. And so now I know, okay, so you talked a little bit about the fact you have Joan's Ashes, but what's the story behind there's lots of bees?
Yes. So on, you know, this Fabergé looking vessel that her remains are in has a bee on it, but you'll see in that photo, the little shelf where she stays has a bunch of bees. There's some Fashion Police, Joan Ranger badges, but the bees are really important to Joan. And I love that you were mentioning earlier at the top of the show that the charity was Busy Bee or something. What was that? One of the first slides tonight, we were talking, it had a bee on it.
Oh, Local Buzz.
Local Buzz. So it's funny how this episode really is so about bees. But Joan used to just say that bees should give us hope, because bees, aerodynamically, bees should not be able to fly. They're too heavy in the back. Their wings are too small. But bees don't listen to the people that tell them no. They just flap their wings and they fly anyway. And that's the only way to survive life nowadays, is you have to not listen to the people that tell you no and the people that tell you you can't. You just have to just go do it anyway. And you'll surprise yourself what you're able to do. And so for like 27 years on QVC, every month she made a new bee pin, and they're all different colors. And so when she passed away, I went to her nightstand and I took those bee pins that were in that photo because she had worn them. And so now when I have to wear like a suit, I'll wear a little bee on the lapel. And it's just, you know, a way that I have to sort of have her with me at those important events. So it's nice to have somebody's energy around.
Right.
So yeah, bees, it's so funny. Whenever I see, you know, a bee, anything, it always makes me think of Grandma Joan.
Wow. So Tony, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your personal stories and so much more. Just kind of that so many people, I mean, it's like I saw people's like, I mean, like Lola was like, oh yeah, no, I was there. It's like I remember going to Circle Records and learning about Oingo Boingo and all these things. So thank you so much for joining us and sharing so much of yourself.
Marshall, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it so much. It's so great to talk about, you know, growing up in the 80s in Phoenix was really, really great. I think so, you know, often Arizona gets a bad rap. And, you know, I grew up in Phoenix thinking that we were incredibly diverse and incredibly open-minded. And it, you know, it was only when I moved away and then came back and saw what other people's perception of Arizona is that I learned some other things. But it does give me hope, because Phoenix especially has always been a place where there weren't neighborhoods that were this demographic or that demographic. We've always been all mixed up, and we've always figured out a way to live together in shared spaces. And I hope that continues, because I just think Phoenix is just an incredible city.
So thank you so much. Have a great rest of your night, and I will talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Oh my gosh. I just want to again give a big shout out and say thank you, Tony. That was so delightful on so many levels. So now we're coming up to a section I like, the vault. And so, we've been doing stuff with Local Buzz. And so we did a brief video on kind of the old county courthouse downtown, which is the old city hall as well, which is a pretty amazing building. If you go inside, really beautiful. And so through researching, I discovered that the old city hall actually made an appearance on the Umbrella Academy as the Dallas police station, which I thought was really kind of cool. And so, but the reason why I wanted to talk about it is if you go inside the old city hall, the door is open. You just open the door, and there you go is this really cool brass phoenix in this beautiful entryway with these radiating strips of marble going in. So it's really a beautiful space to look at. And so I wanted to give that a shout out, how you can just walk in Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, open that door and see it. It's such a beautiful space. So now you'll see why you want to share. If you're on Facebook, you have that button. Go ahead and click that share button, because, oh my gosh, I mean, the fun we had tonight. And that's the thing. It's like we have fun every week with all different sorts of stories. So next week we have James Garcia, who is an educator, an author. It's going to be a really fun episode. So be sure and join us next week as well. And so please reach out to me. I love to hear from you all. I mean, I love seeing the people saying how much they loved having Tony on. I mean, it's so funny because I've been trying to get Tony on for a while, and so glad we were able to make it work this time. So I always want to give a shout out to PJ, who creates so many tasty beverages. I'm going to have another sip just because. And Chris and Cole, who did that video. So as we say goodnight, I am going to show the video we did with Local Buzz, where we actually got into the Jones Montoya house, which is 1879. Oh my gosh, it was such a treat. And so we get there and we're able to go inside the house. So it's only about a minute long. So enjoy, and I will see you all next week. Hello, Local Buzz. Marshall Shore, the hip historian here, and we are at the site of the oldest house in the city of Phoenix. We are here at the 1879 Jones Montoya house, built by an Anglo and Mexican couple because they had farmland very close by. Look right there. It is adobe bricks from the late 1870s. How cool is that? We are inside the Jones Montoya house, the oldest documented house in the city of Phoenix. And what you realize, it was actually two separate rooms that they then later on added space in between and behind to make a larger house. So the Jones Montoya house is Anglo-Mexican from the late 1870s. So be sure to like, follow, and share, because we're going to be bringing you more Arizona history and lots of love.